everyone, welcome back to the Endurance House podcast. This week we had Rich Luers over to the Endurance House, and it was quite a treat. We had a good time talking to Rich. It was quite a long episode, but we got a lot of information covered, and I think you'll like it from the beginning all the way to the end. So much area that we covered, from his complete running history, back from being a sprinter all the way to being an ultra runner. We talked about his race directing and timing company, so much more. Just had a great time talking to Rich. I really do hope you'll enjoy this episode. Tammy and I really did. If you did enjoy this and other episodes, please leave us a review on your podcast platform. You can go to Facebook, Instagram. You can always email us at theendurancehousepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to support us a little bit more, go check out our Patreon page at patreon.com, The Endurance House Podcast. Got some cool things, some different membership levels, as low as $3 a month. Every little bit does help us out. And of course, check out our Facebook group. Lots of stuff going on there recently. Search the Endurance House Podcast Fans on Facebook, and you can come in, get some insights, previews, upcoming shows, good discussions. Just come on in, get involved. I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, I won't talk much more. I just really do hope you enjoy this episode. Like I said, I'd love to hear from you. So let's go hear from Rich. How's it going?
Doing good.
Nice. Not too bad. Good. Oh, it's been a good weekend. Long weekend. It's still one more day.
Yeah. At least we get one more day of recovery, or at least recovery
right,
from
exactly. Yeah.
last 2 days. So
nice. Well, appreciate you being able to come on and changing the date after we were just talking about it just a couple days ago.
yeah, nothing like a text and be like, hey, you want to jump on a pod tomorrow?
Yeah, hey. The less that's good. The less preparation, the less you have to think about it, the better, right?
Yeah, that's right. Let's just do it.
That's our attitude every week. Yeah.
That's right.
We're just gonna wing this.
Very
Absolutely.
little prep. That's why it's just a good conversation, because it's very little prep. Tammy does the fact checking, so she'll do the ultra sign up fact checking.
Yeah, she's got it up on the screen over here. I already got that. Okay.
Yeah.
Not yet. I will.
Call me out on something.
Wait, you said you were what, second? But this shows fourth.
Yeah.
No. So no, very cool. Thanks for like I said, thanks for coming on. Known you for a little bit, some time. So ultra runner, race director, on your timing company. Those what the things that I know of you. But for everybody else that doesn't know you at all or whatever, why don't you try to introduce yourself, whether it's your family, your running history, your company, whatever you'd like to share.
Sure. Yeah. So first, Jeff and Tammy, thanks for having me on the pod. I've known this pod since the beginning, since Ryan started it.
Yeah,
so it's good to see that it's in good hands and taken off from what Ryan started from the very beginning. So thanks for having me on. And yeah, as you mentioned, we've known each other for a little while. We've crossed paths probably a bunch in the past, but probably just more recently have got to know each other. So I'm Rich Luers. I'm a runner. I've been a runner my entire life. I guess you could say an endurance runner. I don't consider myself an endurance runner, but just a runner. But I've done ultras. My running background, I started fifth grade. Kind of got started running, and then ran cross country in middle school. Cross country and track all through middle school, high school, ran track in college. And then, ever since then, just continuing to run, and obviously have moved up the distances and, pretty much don't race anything less than a half. I mean, I've done actually did 5K last year, and it was probably the first 5K I've done in many years. So definitely more of the longer stuff. Also, I'm as you mentioned, I'm owner of Final Lap Racing, which is a race timing and event management company in the St. Louis area, but on the Illinois side. So we do majority of our events over in the Metro East side, but we have expanded and have done events in other regions for over time, and a husband, and so I also have another full-time corporate job too, on top of the Final Lap business. So I stay very busy between both jobs and trying to squeeze in my own training. So
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to be able to juggle all those balls, right?
yeah, I mean, I look at it and I say, man, that's a lot. And there's definitely times of the year, based on event schedules, it can be very hectic, or if I'm training at the same time, it can be very hectic. But then, I kind of look at it too during those time periods where I'm not at events, where I'm not training, and it's like, I kind of miss it, and I don't know if I've been doing it for so long, I don't know if I would have it any other way. So
Nice. Yeah. No, I get you. I get you. So when you were in middle school, like what got you into running? Like how did that start? Was it just, hey, there's a team?
yeah, it's kind of, so it's when I was little, I was interested in sports, but never really did any sports. I did do a community basketball league, but I was terrible at basketball. Just did it. But where running really started was in fifth grade. They would have this kind of like running program during lunch, and so when you get done eating, then you can go and meet outside, and we go run. And the school that I was at was it was out in the middle of nowhere, and so it was like, run to the railroad tracks and come back. And I don't even know how far it was. It was, maybe that was like 2 miles or a mile and a half, out and back. And then some kids, they would go even further and come back. And so, for me, I just saw it as a way to socialize. But then also too, it's, if you ran slow enough, you got back to school late and you get to miss a little bit of the class, so it was good, but, so, I kind of made friends with some of the kids that were, doing this little run thing. And, we would, you're fifth grade. So it's, you come in, you scarf down your lunch real quick and go outside, and it was a way to get out of the school too. So, but, then when we got into sixth grade, it was, and I didn't really, at the time, I didn't really like running. It was, again, it was more of a social thing. So then, when during the winter, when tracks sign up during gym class, they were trying to get kids to see if they were interested for track, and everyone was signing up for it, and they're like, Rich, you should sign up. And I'm like, I don't like running, and it was kind of just peer pressure. And so I was like, all right, I'll do it. Like everyone else is doing it, and so I signed up, and told my parents, I came home and I was like, I signed up for track, they're like, okay. I never really ran, besides what I did, the year before, but that was really nothing. And so then, so I actually ended up enjoying it. I wasn't that great. And, I think my sixth grade year, I ran like the 100-meter dash and did like shot put or something, but then my seventh grade year, so I ended up, making more friends in sixth grade. And so then some of these friends were doing cross country, and they're like, you should go do cross country in the fall and come run with us. And I was like, okay, And so then I did cross country in the fall, and then, really start to, bond with the team. And then, then obviously went into the track season. And I also, that was kind of where I had kind of one of my first like growth spurts a little bit. And so then, then all of a sudden I became fast, and because I was taller, had longer stride, and then so in the seventh grade I ended up being like one of the fastest kids in the school. So and ran the 100 to 200, 100 hurdles, and I was on the relays, and we went to state and everything. So that's what really then like hooked me, because then I was fast, and
once you became good at it, you're like,
I was like, well, I'm actually good at this, and so so then and then eighth grade year, obviously, then was, still one of the fastest kids in the school. And then, still did cross country. And I was really just I wasn't good at cross. I was more the speedster. So I didn't really have the endurance, but I was just doing cross because I was friends with the distance runners. And and it was also just something to do in the fall and summer. And, we were all friends. So, and then carried that into high school. And, then it was like, okay, we got to get faster. Right. And then I ran cross country in high school, my freshman year, and then my freshman year in track, because that's where I was really concentrated, was track, and really wanted to, be good. And I ended up a couple meets into my freshman year, I ended up breaking my growth plate off my hip in a relay, and it hurt. I had to go to the hospital, and so that obviously knocked me out for the rest of the year for a while, and then was able to heal from that, and then start running again in the summer, and started doing cross country, and start building up for cross country, and I started realizing like I really need to start training over the summer and put miles in, because these guys that are at my age or even older, they're putting in miles, and we'd meet over the summer and such. And so, and then I started getting a little bit more serious about it, but I still wasn't that fast. And then, track was still always my thing, through high school. And, in cross country, I was like our number 8 guy, number 9, and then, our senior year, I was able to get into, I had a really good summer of training. I put in a lot of miles and got faster. So then my senior year, I was able to get into the top 7. Or actually, no, excuse me. It was my junior year. It was my junior year. I was able to kind of bump into that number 7 spot for a couple races in varsity. So, it's just, I just kept wanting to get faster and so forth, and, being competitive and so forth. So then going into my senior year, I really wanted to make that my last good year, obviously. And so we got going into cross country. So this is a good story. So going into high school cross country, I knew it was going to be tough to get into varsity again, because there was some freshman kids coming up, and there was 3 freshman kids that were coming up, really good runners. I knew they were faster than me. So 2 of them end up getting in top 7, bumped me down to JB. So my senior year, I ended up running JB. And so one of those guys, and I don't know if this name rings a bell, but Tammy, you can look him up on Ultra Sign Up. Is it was a freshman kid named Matt Flaherty. So Matt Flaherty was a freshman. He bumped me out of varsity.
Okay.
If you look him up on Ultra Sign Up, he's a phenomenal ultra guy. 2 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago now. He took 3rd, I believe, at Leadville, or 4th at Leadville. So, phenomenal guy now.
Wow.
I know he's DNF'd the last 2 years at Leadville, but I think it was 3 years ago he put a great race together. But I mean, he's done, North Face 50K, 50 miler, 50K. He's done other things outside of college. But yeah, it's kind of funny to see. I've seen his name pop up every once in a while, in results, and I'm like, yeah, that kid bumped me out of varsity my senior year. But anyway,
at least he's doing something with it at this point, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Fast, right? He's still fast. He's still killing it. But anyway, yeah. So I thought my running, in track, we were on 4x8. I was on the 4x8. Well, so actually, back up. We got a new assistant coach in cross country, and he became the distance coach in my senior year in high school. And so at that year, going into my senior year, I was like, I was running the 300 hurdles and the 400, and I was like, I want to go out to the school record. I think I was like second and a half or something like that off the school record, which is a lot in sprints, right? But I felt like I was going to close the gap. And our assistant coach, who's the distance coach now, he goes, Rich, I'm going to put you in the 800. And I said, why? I'm not an 800 guy. And he goes, but you run cross country. You got the endurance. And I said, but coach, I'm going to get the school record in the 300 hurdles. And he goes, you're going to get the school record in 4x8. And I said, coach, I'm a hurdler. I'm not an 800 guy, not a middle distance guy. He goes, but you train with the cross country guys, the middle distance guys, all fall, all winter. He's like, you're doing the workouts, you're keeping up with them. You're an 800 runner. And so, first meet, he puts me in the 800 open. I get mad. I'm out of spite. I don't want to do this. So of course I go out there, as a high school kid, all mad and just, I'm going to prove him wrong. Right. And just go out there and I'm just going to run as hard as I can. Well, I think I took like second or third in the race. I was the fastest, beat all the other kids in our school. I was our number one runner. And I was and he came up to me and he's like, Rich, see, you're an 800 runner. And I was like, dang it, and that's kind of where I would say that's kind of where the journey slowly started to come to where, I was no longer a sprinter. And then I wasn't really looking to go. I mean, I kind of had a wish to run in college. And it was actually my dad we were looking at colleges. My dad actually had reached out to the coach at SIUE, so Southern Illinois University of Evansville, had reached out to the coach, and I was already planning a visit. And he's like, "Yeah, look, I reached out to the coach, and he wants to meet you." And I was like, "Well, what?" And so that was kind of cool. And so yeah, we met with the coach and everything, and he was like, if you want to walk on, we don't have any scholarships, but you're more than welcome to walk on, and so forth. And so, yeah, I ended up walking on at SIUE. At the time, they were Division II, or they're Division I now, but so was able to walk on, and so he's like, well, what are you? What events are you? And I was like, well, I'm an 800 runner now, right? And he's like, all right, well, we'll put you in the middle distances, maybe the 400, 4x4, stuff like that, and C team or whatever, and it's all right, and so yeah, so I ended up being a middle distance runner through college, and I wasn't fast by no means. I look at my times now and I'm like, yeah, I wish I could run those times, right? But I compare to college, even at D2 school, I mean, I was fast enough to be on the team, to walk on and keep my spot, but I was always in slow heats, and I'd be top 2 or 3 in all the slow heats at every meet, but I was never in that fast heat. And so then, I was mostly just 800. And then as my junior year came around, I guess it was my junior year. Yeah, my junior year came around. I ended up bumping up into the 1500. I gave that a shot. So I ended up, my last 2 years, I ended up doubling at almost every meet and running the 15-800, which is pretty difficult. It's a challenging double,
It's a big transition.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, and during that time, I wasn't really, I kind of start the training in college, and this is to any college athlete, can say this is, it's definitely intense. There's times where you're in practice longer than you are in school, or traveling, or, whatever, you may be only in class like 2 hours of the day, but you're in practice for 4, and for running, it's, we were meeting the guys on the middle distance team. We would meet up at early in the morning, get a run in around campus, and then have regular practice at night. And, we could be lifting as middle distance guys, we weren't the distance guys. So we weren't putting in long days, we put in, maybe some longer distance stuff, but, we would also transition and lift with the sprinters, or do maybe a workout with the 400 guys, and do 400s or 1500s or 600s meter workouts, but then, or we'd have our own and, or do mile repeats with the distance guys. So we were kind of like bouncing around. But after a while, it's just like, it kind of grew on me, and kind of grew to where it's like, I just didn't like it anymore. Because I wasn't fast. I was getting blown away in all the workouts, and, I was always a slow guy. And, I was still running. I mean, my PR in the 1500 was a 4:10, but when you have a handful of guys all running under 4 for 1500, I mean, it's a big gap. And so I actually wanted to quit my senior year, or going into my senior year. From college, I just almost didn't want to do it. But then I kind of thought about it, and I was like, I have a spot on the team. They're not going to cut me, but so I just thought, how many people actually do a sport, in the NCAA all 4 years?
Right.
Not many. So a lot of people, I've seen a lot of guys and even girls on the team that, did it for a couple of years. They quit, for multiple reasons. And it was like, let's just stick it out. And so I stuck it out and ran my last year and tried to enjoy it. And so, once I graduated from college, it was like, I was kind of free. I was like, I just want to just run. And I just kind of just did my own thing. And at the time, I was actually, my senior year, I was actually working at a local running store too, part-time. And so after college, I started working there full-time. And the staff there, we were all young, and so we would go and run together and do races together. And so then I just kind of gradually went from running local 5K, 10Ks, and then I decided that I wanted to do a half marathon, and and did a couple half marathons, and had pretty good success running half marathons. My very first marathon was the St. Louis half marathon. Before it was it was the Spirit of St. Louis, which was 2005, 2005, I think it was, or 2006, and, it took like, I think it was like 4th overall. And then, I went to Rock and Roll Nashville and placed in the top 30, and went to Memphis, St. Jude, and placed in the top 30 again down there in the half. And so I was running some pretty fast times because I was still fit from college. And so then I was like, okay, I kind of like this like road racing thing, and like this longer distance. I can't run fast anymore. Even a 5K at this point I was running fast 5Ks looking back on it, but I wasn't winning anything. But it was kind of like, I kind of like this longer distance stuff. That's kind of just where, then again, that's kind of where it really started to take the next step of, let's do this. And then so after I did a couple half marathons, I was like, let's give this marathon thing a try. What could I do in a marathon? I'm running 120 and a half. What could I do in a full? And so and then I did Chicago, and did Chicago and marathon. And then, my goal was to qualify for Boston first time out, which I did. Try to break 3 first time out, missed it by 40 seconds, ran 30 flat 40. And that's because I walked at mile 24 and a half.
Oh, really?
Like when you make that left turn, that final
in Chicago? Yeah.
That final left turn. Yeah. In Chicago, that final left turn. Well, that left turn when you get on the Michigan Avenue.
Right to Michigan. Yeah.
That bottom part there, it's kind of changed a little bit, but you used to cross the highway there by, I still call it Comiskey, but where the White Sox play, and then cross the highway, and then you used to make a left turn on Michigan. And I made that left turn. I was like, I'm done. Just start walking. I walked like one city block, and it was the first time I ever walked in my life in a race. And I was like, and then I kind of like got mad at myself and started running and ended up finishing. And then, then when I made that final left turn down the home stretch, I saw the clock say 3 flat. And I was like, man, I could have broke 3. That was my goal. And if I wasn't for walking, but yeah. And then, that was in 2005. Hold on, let me look at that.
Yes, I'm checking. It's 2005.
2005. I had to.
She's got Athlinks up too.
I do.
But so that was, and then from there it just kind of just took off, and just for a long time I was doing marathons, a lot of road stuff, and then yeah, and then I kind of life kind of got in the way and kind of backed off on the racing scene and then got hurt. And then it was several years, this cycle of trying to get back in shape, got hurt, trying to get back in shape, got hurt, trying to get, or not running at all. And where I was still racing, but I just wasn't fast anymore. And just, it was this bad cycle. And then it wasn't until probably around 6 years ago is when I was like, okay, I need to get back to who I am. I want to be fast. I want to be a runner, or at least fast for myself. But I want to get back in shape. And, the only way that I know how to get back in shape is to train for a marathon. And so, I started training for a couple marathons in a row, again, trying to get back to Boston. They were just kind of epic fails. And looking back on the training, I just didn't know how to train. I was, just not doing things properly. And so after doing about 3 marathons in a row and coming up with some pretty bad times, I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with, again, I kind of didn't like running again. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with marathons. I'm never going to do Boston again. I'm done chasing that. I'm done with this distance stuff. I need a new challenge. And I did a couple, like, dabbled in like some biathlons, and then I kind of cycled a little bit.
Okay.
But I was like, I kind of just need a new challenge, and just kind of, and then end up seeing just an advertisement for a 50 miler. And I was like, that, it was the Antelope Canyon 50 miler out in Arizona. And I was like, that looks beautiful. Like,
yeah. If there's one that's going to, like, entice somebody to run 50 miles, it's like something like that, right?
And I was just thinking, I'm like, because, I was trying to qualify for Boston, running these marathons, and, road racing is I feel like road racing is like cutthroat, right? And because it's very time goal oriented, and the margin of error in road racing is so small, right? Especially if you're trying to chase Boston,
right,
or you're trying to break 4 hours, or, or whatever, trying to break 3, whatever the barriers are.
Look, you were just talking about being pissed off about 40 seconds, at Chicago. I was like 40 seconds. I'm like, we're like, my margin is like 40 minutes,
yeah. And it's
4 hours.
So that's what I was thinking is, okay, well, I just want to finish this 50 miler, I don't care about time, I'm not qualifying for anything. Like, who cares, right? And so, so then I ended up doing that 50 miler, and then it was just, I took my time and, and enjoyed the scenery and just enjoyed the course. And it was definitely a challenge. I was definitely hurting at the end, but it was a great experience, and also it was a trip to go to a place where I've never been before. And actually my parents came with me, which was pretty cool.
Cool.
So it was a good time to, like, go on a trip with them. We've never done that before, just us. And so then it was just like, I finished, and it was like, okay, that's great, and I checked it off the list, right? One and done. And but then, afterwards, just like everyone does, it's the very next day you start thinking about things like, what's next? What could I do? And then I was like, I could probably run faster. I bet I can run on a flat course. I bet I can knock out a fast 50. Like, because Antelope Canyon, you're running, there's sections where you're running on sand, like heavy sand. And, and that, when you go through Antelope Canyon, I walked the entire canyon, taking pictures and just enjoying it. And then, you go down all the way to Horseshoe Bend, or on the canyon, so it's like the famous horseshoe, and the course literally goes to the edge. Like, the flag is at the end of, like, you're running on the edge. And so it's like you get there and everyone stops and takes pictures.
Wow.
It's like a big thing. And there's even, when you get further away from the road and out in kind of the middle of nowhere, there's other canyons and stuff. And then you even drop down these slot canyons. And so there's even a couple sections where you got to, like, climb down. Or at least the year that I did, this was several years ago, where you actually just kind of slid on your butt down these rocks and into a canyon, and then ran this canyon, and then you had to take a ladder to come back out. I know I've had some friends do it recently, and they changed it to where you actually you don't slide on your butt anymore. You actually have to go down the ladder. They put a ladder to go down and then come back up, but for safety reasons. But it's like that's just time wasted, right? And so I was like, man, I bet I could probably run a fast 50, and so then you just start thinking about that. And so then that fall I did Tunnel Hill 50 and ran a pretty quick 50, and then that just kind of got me hooked on ultras. It got my mind kind of away from from anything, from the marathon, the road stuff. It was like, I don't care really. I mean, I care about time now because I want to try to run a fast ultra, but it's like, it's different, right? You can stop there's aid stations. You stop at an aid station. If you get tired, you can take a little quick walk break, or shuffle, or, it's not, like I said, it's not, the margin of error is not as small as it is in road racing, where it's like, you're down to seconds, right? And in marathons, it's like, oh, you took 20 minutes at an aid station. Okay. Okay, maybe I get that down to 15 next time, but it's like still a lot of time. But yeah. And so then, start doing a bunch of ultra marathons and, 50s, and then moved up to the 100K and did a couple 100Ks, just because I was like, well, what's another 12 more miles, right? You've done 50s. What's 12, right?
Right.
And, but then, after a couple of cycles of that, then I was like, man, I've really, with that, by doing ultras, I really start to take my training into the next level, start running more miles and more than I have or had before. And so then I was like, man, I've really got this really good base of endurance going, but I wasn't doing any speed. I was, I was doing some like tempo runs and stuff like that, but I wasn't doing speed work. And so I was like, if I could just add speed to my training on top of this ultra, I bet I can run a fast road marathon now, because I felt like that's what was always holding me back before, was just the endurance. I'd always die when I get to like 22, and just those last four I just fall apart. And I'm like, well, I've got great endurance now. And so, so then I got a training plan for a marathon, start training pretty well, correctly, and started adding speed to it, and then end up, and I went and did grandmas, and I was my expectation was, I like to run a 3:15, and, well, actually, excuse me, I like to run a 3:10, because three at the time, how old I was, Boston was 3:05. And I was like, I know I can't run 3:05. And I'm not worried about Boston. I want to run a 3:10 just to prove to myself that I can run a 3:10, because back when I was in my young 20s, when I did Chicago and did Boston, the qualifying time was 3:10. And I'm like, I would love to run 3:10, but that's a long shot. No, there's no way I can run that. And so went to grandma's, and I was like, I'm just going to go with the 3:10 pace group and just see what I can do. Like, if I fall apart, I fall apart, whatever, like, I feel like I put a pretty good training block in, and I've ran these ultras. Like, I've got the endurance. Let's just hope what I can do. And I end up running 3:10:58 or something. I kind of I fell off the pace group toward the end there. But the last like 2 miles I fell off, but was able to squeeze in a sub 3:11, which, still says 3:10 at the beginning.
3:10 something, right? Yeah.
Who cares about the change at the end?
At this point. So before you were mad about 40 seconds. Now it's, it was, what's a couple seconds, right?
Yeah. And so that, I will say that after that race really changed my perspective on things. That's when I got my confidence back. I think I can do this. And I think that I can, if I really, now that I saw what a good training plan can do and train properly, I really felt like, if I can do this now, I could start putting some pretty fast times together and kind of get back to, I mean, I'm getting older, I was approaching 40 at the time. And so it's like, if I could just run semi-fast, I'll take it. Right. And, but that just the confidence booster. And I was like, all right, that was grandma's, grandma's was in June. So again, as soon as I got back from Duluth, I was like, I need to take this fitness level I've got and just go right into another training plan. And so then I was like, I want to I think I'm going to go do Indianapolis. It's flat, it's fast.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me, it's 18 weeks out, or it was like 20 weeks out. So I'm like, okay, give myself a couple weeks off and then jump right into a training plan. And so then so I signed up for Indianapolis to try to qualify for Boston. So I basically just did the training plan that I had done before, just repeated it. So I was like, well, it worked the first time. Let's see if it works again. And so I ended up doing Indianapolis, and I think that was fall of 19. I think that was 19, and so I ran a 307, but Boston was 305, so just missed it. I mean, I was running with the 305 pace group, but the 305 pace group was actually running 303 pace. I don't know what the deal was that year. They had all of their pacers that year were all running under the goal times. Typically, these marathons or even half marathons, any they hire pacers or they get volunteers, and those pacers have to be within a minute of that time, right? Give and take 30 seconds, but they actually, if you don't, they basically get fired. They don't get reinvited back. And so for whatever reason, I don't know, Indianapolis that year, it was right before the trials too. And so they had a bunch of pacers. I mean, they had pacers on the elite side trying to get people to the trials. But I mean, at the 305 group, we had three pacers. They assigned 3 pacers to that group. And there was a large group of us, and we were going out quick. We were going out hot, and we all started looking at our watches going, dude, what are we doing? We're running sub 7s. Like, that's not the pace. And one of the pacers, we got to a little past the halfway point, and we came through at like 129, 128 or something. I think it was 129. We came through, and I said something to the pacer. I was like, dude, we're well over the goal pace. We need to be coming through at 132. And he goes, are you trying to qualify for Boston? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, you got to be 3 minutes under the goal time. So that's what we're going for. We're running 3 minutes faster.
I was just going to ask because that was the time where they had to, like, it was ranked right of under the goal time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean the year before you had to run almost 4 minutes to get into Boston.
Yeah.
So, so then it was like this whole thing. It was like, oh my God, like, I was just trying to hang on to a 305. Now I'm running 302, 303, like, kind of freaking out.
I mean, I feel like at that point, you're like, your job is to get me to qualify. Like, leave it for me to get in or not, right? Like, if I wanted to be a 3-minute pace, then I would go do the 3-minute pace group, right? Or the 3-hour pace group.
But and so, but then and so over as the miles clicked by, that the group kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and but the thing was they end up getting faster, and they end up dropping me at like 22, 20. Yeah, it was like 22 miles. The group ended up dropping me, and I fell off the back, and I think my split was like a 6:58, and they just kept pulling away from me. And I was like, I'm done. And it was a windy day. So once I got out of the pack, I was in no man's land, and then it just killed me. But so, I mean, I was able to hang on to a 307, but so missed qualifying. But I was like, that's my fastest marathon since I was 23 years old, and I was 39, 38 at the time. So I was like, I'll take it, even though it was not what I wanted, but man. And so again, that grew my confidence even more. I was just like, okay, as I'm getting older, I'm actually getting faster here. And, so then after that, I was like, okay, well, kind of the inverse of what I just had the year before was okay, now I've got all this speed. What happens if I can add more endurance? And so I'm like, I bet I can run another fast ultra now that I've got speed in my, and also too, just being around that time, I was friends with a lot of ultra runners, and and being around them and crewing them at different events. And I was, I kept everyone was asking me, are you going to get into, would you ever do a 50? Because I'd done a couple 100Ks at that point. And they're like, are you ready for 100? And I'm like, no way, no way. And then after Indy, I had done another 100K. I went and did Black Canyon. And that was right before COVID, like literally 4 weeks or 3 weeks right before COVID. So I did the 100K there, and that had a semi good race. I mean, I had a spelt in the middle of the race where it got real hot, and I got dehydrated from mile 32 to 50. I didn't take any calories in. It got really hot. I came into mile 50, complete zombie mode. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, it was the first time she had seen me in a situation like that. And so she was freaking out. Luckily, our friend Jamie Maher was there and took care of me and got me food. And once those calories kicked in, I was running hard the last 10 miles or 12 miles and ended up passing I think I passed like 15 guys in the last 12 miles, and I came across the line sprinting. I probably sprint the last mile in.
Nice.
And afterwards, I was like, man, I was on a really good high there. I was feeling good. What could have happened if I would have kept going? Like, if that was not the finish line, how long could I ride that high?
Yeah.
It really got me thinking, okay, maybe I am ready for that 100, distance. And so, yeah, I ended up doing it. So then I ended up signing up COVID came and, shut everything down, didn't do much. 2021 came around, and then I ended up getting into Hennepin and running Hennepin in the fall of 21. And that was my 100 debut. So I guess I was officially a ultra runner at that point. I feel like, even though I've done many ultras since then.
Seems like you picked very exposed races. Like, I mean, so your marathons all seem very exposed. Boston's very exposed. Chicago's extremely exposed, right? And then you look at Arizona, Antelope, and then Hennepin. They're all very. Do you run anything in actual woods?
I mean, I've done smaller distances all 50Ks in woods. But it's.
Do you do well in the heat?
It's funny you ask, because I feel like I don't, but I feel like everything's hot.
Yeah.
That's one thing right now that I'm trying to train through is the heat, and it's a never-ending battle. But it's the races that I've done. You say they're exposed, and I really thought about that, but yeah, they are, right. I've done Black Canyon, that's totally exposed. You're in the desert. There's nothing out there. I've done Antelope Canyon, same thing. It's in the desert. I mean, it's at higher altitude. It's northern Arizona. I think it's 6,000 feet, or 6,000, 5,000 feet, so it's a higher altitude. I mean, because the year I did it, it actually snowed the day before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the course actually wasn't as bad as it has been, or, because the snow was or the sand was frozen, because it had a little dusting of snow on it. So it almost was like running on the road, because the sand was just hard. It did get loosened up as the runners went by, because you kind of loop back around at the end, and then the sand's all tore up, and it was hard to run through. But yeah, it's totally exposed. The only time you had shade was when you were in the canyons. And but yeah, I mean, and then like all the road racing, all the marathons that I've done are, some of them are exposed areas. There's not much around, or you're running through a city, but still, I mean, even Chicago, you're running in Chicago, right? Downtown Chicago. But I mean, it's a windy city, and you could be running down, whatever street, and, you get that side wind every intersection, or whatever. Yeah. But what, I have done a lot of trail races, smaller distances in the woods with vert and rocks and technical trails, but which is fine, and I've done some of that stuff. But I feel like the races that I've chose to actually like race the bigger races, I kind of want to go again, and I think it just goes back to, track and just road, success and fast road racing is I want to go fast, I want to run a fast time. And so some of those ultras that you can see on my ultra sign up that I've done where it may not be a great time, it's because it just the vert and the technical trails just tore me up, I've done Bandera, and I mean, it was all rock, crazy vert. No thanks. We'll never do that race again. I've done Sean O'Brien 100K out in Malibu, California. Totally was not ready for that. I mean, beautiful scenery. You're running through Santa Barbara Mountains. Awesome. The best part of that race is you go up and over the mountain and you see the Pacific Ocean. You see Malibu down below. You see the beach. You see LA over in the distance. Beautiful. But it's 13,000 feet of elevation gain in 58 miles. Like, it's just stupid crap. Like, and I just, it just tears me up, So I'm more just, I just want to run kind of faster times just to see, at least right now, I mean, so like trying to run a fast 50 at Tunnel Hill, fast 100 at Hennepin. And even so, haven't even mentioned, but I'm training for my next 100 and it's flatter too. So trying to run a fast time. And so right now it's just that stuff. I just want to try to go after times just from a goal perspective, just to see what I could do and push myself. I mean, maybe eventually, go and try to run a crazy, ultra and woods with crazy vert or technical trail, I mean, I do enjoy running in trail runs, in the woods or whatever, it's definitely, there's, as a ultra runner yourself, both of you guys, there's something about running in the woods, right? That's calming.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but it's at the same time, I don't know. I just want to run when I race, I want to race. And as I get more confidence in myself too, it's like, I don't want to just, stumble over a rock and just end my race or have to walk up some crazy hill, it's, there's different types of guys and gals, that's what they love, right? It's beast mode. They want to, that's what they like. And, you see that in the pro side too, where you got like a Camille Herron who's all she wants to do is just track flat.
Just stay on the track all day.
She's done Western States, but, like, or in other races, but, she just wants to go flat and fast. Right. And then you got other people that are they just want, give me the hardest course out there. And I'm just leaning more toward at least the flatter stuff, or at least, semi-flat, air quotes for an ultra perspective, but just want to see what I can do time-wise for right now. And then, and maybe as I get more and more of these under my belt, and then, kind of venture off into more of the harder races. I mean, there's some harder races that I, may run later, but we'll see. So that's, it's a long-winded answer,
No, so the speed and the endurance of this with the speed is your challenge, right? So that's what's challenging when we talk about endurance for you, right? So for others, myself, it's about the challenge of the course, and it's the challenge of the verts, because I'm not fast, so I'm not a speedster, so I'm like, okay, then I'll take the vert and I'll just chugging for 40 hours or 38 hours or whatever it takes is fine by me. But I'm not going to run a fast 100 or a fast 100K. So
I mean, it's they're just like you, it's about challenging yourself, right? Pushing yourself. And, it's, as I said, over the last, especially 4 years, I've gotten more and more confident in myself. And I've started to do more and more to my training. I mean, I'm running more miles now than I ever have. I've built in strength training on top of the mileage, doing speed works. And so it's only taken me 40 some years to realize, you should be doing all that stuff. And it pays off, and so it's just like, at this point, it's just, I just want to see what I can do and just push myself. And that's, everyone asks what your why is, right? What's your why? Why do you do ultras? Or, and it's, for me, it's just, I want to push the boundaries of myself. I want to do something that I don't think I could ever have done. If you would have told me, 20 years ago that you'd be running a 100-miler, I would have, 20 something year old me would have told you, you're absolutely insane. That's crazy,
I'm with
even,
you. Yeah.
I mean, even 10 years ago, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, or told me 10 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm, running 100 milers, I would be like, you're insane. There's no way. So, but
yeah, even when you were running marathons, did you ever think that you would run a 100-miler? Like, be
no,
like, oh, let's string 4 of these together, right?
no. I mean, so my very first 100K or ultra marathon was a 50K. Sorry. So my very first ultra was a 50K. Tammy, you can look it up in Ultra Sign Up. I don't remember the year. I want to say 04, no, 06, I think it was, something like that, 05. It was one of the years I was training for Chicago. It was Love in the Hills. And it was my friend who I was training with. We were roommates. We were training. We were both running Chicago, and we ran Chicago. We qualified for Boston, so we were training for Boston. And he was like, "Let's go do this 50K down in Louisville in the middle of our marathon training." And I was just like, "No, I don't. No way. Like, I don't want to run more than 26.2 miles. Like, when I get to that finish line, I do not want to run any further. Like, running ultra marathons is insane. I am not doing that." And so he ended up convincing me, of course, it's like, wow, it's another 4 more miles, right? What's another 4? Yeah. But it's, and that course is, at least from what I remember, is pretty tough.
Road? Was it road?
No, it's trail. It's all single track. I don't know what the vert is on it, but it's all single track. If I can remember correctly, I think it's runnable on some technical stuff, but I do know it's kind of like a lollipop you do, or it's like 2 little loops, and then it's an out and back, and then the out and back you go up and over, I think, like 4 like hill ranges, and so it's a lot of climbing going up, and then you can run fast on the downhill. But I wasn't I just ran marathons, right? And so I just I finished. I was spent, absolutely, and I didn't know anything about ultras, didn't know anything about nutrition, I mean, I was just drinking water and, a couple gels here and there. I didn't know anything. But after that race, I was like, I'm done. Never again. Like, that was check the box, right? Ultra marathon, and never going to do that again. And so it was, that was 2006, and now going all the way to Antelope Canyon I would say that's where my ultra running started. I mean, that was whatever. I don't know what year Antelope Canyon was, 18. So, I mean, it's a long span. So, yeah, you would have, definitely, I would have said, no way. There's no way I'm running that far. So, and, but just, for as long as I've been running, and distances, just especially the more you train and the more you put miles in, I just feel like it's just a number. Like, miles just become a number, and it's just like, go out for a 10-mile run, or go out for, are you doing a 100-mile race? It's like, you can't comprehend it. Like, it's just a number, like,
right.
and you're just like, okay, and I think you just become desensitized to it after a while.
Yeah. Well, your 50K was such a big deal at the time, right? And then for a 100-mile race, you're running a 50K for a training run.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just like you're running marathons for training runs, I mean, like, yeah. So they're just numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And it just, it changed, it's like, just puts everything in perspective, right? It's just like, yeah, I did a 50K training run last weekend. I mean, I ran 23 miles this morning. It's just like, what? And, it's just like, it's crazy, right? Like, but it's just numbers. But then to think like, okay, yeah, I ran a 50K training run, 31 miles, but I'm going to be doing 100 here shortly, so it's you can't think about how far it is. You can't be like, oh, that's, the non, coworkers or non-people who don't run. They're like, oh, they always joke, right? I don't even run that. I don't even drive that far, right?
Right.
It's when you start thinking about it that way, it's like 100 miles. Like, if you think about driving 100 miles, like, damn, that's far.
It is far. It is far to drive. It really is. Yeah.
I mean, that's not just a 10-minute drive. That takes you a while.
Right.
So, you said something about your wife when she was your girlfriend being at one of your ultras. So, obviously, you've been running basically your whole life. Is she a runner? And
She's not. No.
Okay, so then how did you explain your lifestyle when you when you met?
So
what you were doing.
She's not a runner, but she does bodybuilding.
Okay.
So she gets it. Because she trains. When we first met, she was training for shows, for bodybuilding shows. So she's going to the gym for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, and so, it's 4 hours a day. Right. And, and I'm going for just an hour and a half run. So she, it's like she was putting in more work than I was. And so, and it's interesting the way she trains, when they train for those shows, it's very similar to running where, you got your high weeks, you got your rest weeks, and then, your taper going into your event. And so she totally get it. She understood it. I think she didn't understand definitely the ultra piece, it's like, I was just a runner. Right. And, and I remember the very first race, probably the first race she ever saw me was the Macklin Mile. It's a 1 mile race. And I did it right after I had just done grandma's. She didn't go to grandma's with me. I went up there with some friends. And so the very next week I was all excited because I ran this fast marathon. I was like, I'm going to go sign up for the Macklin Mile and just try to run a mile. It's only a mile, right? I'm not fast. I'm quick, but who knows what I can do. And so she ended up seeing me finish, and and I was and I ended up running, I think it was 5:03, and I was like, that's my fastest mile since college. And she was like, oh, okay.
That means nothing to me, right? Yeah.
Just totally over it, 5:03, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And but then I went and did so then she came, let's hear that was then she came to Indy, saw me at Indianapolis Marathon. And I was pretty spent after that. So, just like any other marathon, most people can't walk upstairs, and you lay in the hotel room afterwards, take a nap, and, you're hobbling to the restaurant or whatever, and, on the drive. So, she saw me there a little bit, just tightness and sore, but, it's day 2, maybe day 3, you're fine again. But, that initial just exhaustion is just kind of immediately right after. But then, after Indy, then she came with me to Black Canyon. And that's where she really got full exposed to.
You saw the full pain and
this
suffering.
Whole ultra thing, yeah. And so, like I said, she, we went out there with some friends, and luckily, so went out there with our friends Ryan and Jamie Maher, Ryan who started this podcast. So we went out there with them, and Jamie was hurt, she couldn't do it, but so she crewed, and Ryan and I ran. And so luckily it was a good thing, because otherwise Annie would have been kind of on her own, and which was great, because then she could be with Jamie, and because you had for that race, it's point to point, so you got to drive to these 8 stations, and she could see it, you could see your crew 3 times, but you still got to drive. And first one perfectly, I was like, I told her, explained everything for the night before, we laid everything out, this is what I want at this aid station, this is what I want, if this happens, do this, and try to prepare her, try to label everything, put it in bags, and so first aid station was decent. Second aid station, it was starting to get warm, took a little bit of time, and got everything. But then, like I said, I left that aid station, and there's a climb out of that aid station. And you climb back up out of where you just came down, you climb back up, you go back down, you cross the Verde River, and it's a big climb after that. And I ended up just hiking that whole thing. I was pretty well spent, and it was, again, you're exposed, right? And it's hot in the middle of the day. And so when I basically the heat got to me, I couldn't take any calories in. I was just drinking liquids. And just when I there was the next river crossing across the next river, and some runners caught up to me, and I ended up just like hooking onto the back of them. So it was like this train of probably 6 or 7 people, and they were just like, hey, just come with us, because I think they knew. I mean, looking back on it, they knew that I was in bad shape. I was just like, I was totally salted over, like I was bad on salt. And they're like, just come with us. We're almost to the aid station, you know. And I knew, I was like, I got to see my crew. And I was, so I came into that aid station walking in, and I was a zombie. And Jamie recognized it, you know, from the trailhead. You know, she was like, oh boy, you know. And Annie just, she's kind of freaking out, like, you know, I've got glazed eyes. I'm just like kind of out of it, you know. I'm ready to pass out, you know, totally salt all over me. And, you know, so Jamie's like, here's a chair, sit down. And I sit down, and, you know, the girls are starting to pull, they're starting to pull wrappers out of, or they were looking for wrappers out of my vest, and they're pulling out full gels.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, have you eaten any of this stuff? And I was like, no, I haven't eaten since the last time I saw you, which is like hours ago. And they were like, and even then, you know, like they're asking me these questions, and I was just so out of it, like I couldn't even talk. I was just like, I was just like nodding my head. And so they really knew, and obviously Jamie knew what was going on. So she was like just feeding me ramen noodles and chicken broth, and just getting salt in me, and just trying to get calories in me, where, you know, and Annie was definitely trying to help, but she told me afterwards, she was like freaking out. Like she was just like, you know, I've never seen you like this. And she had told me afterwards, you know, after I got the calories in, and they sent me on my way, you know, she was getting a little teary eyed, you know, she was really concerned. And Jamie, in the car ride, because that was the last aid station, they saw me before the finish line. So when they got in the car, Jamie just told her, you know, Rich is going to be okay. He can fight through this, you know, he's going to be okay. Like, you know, he's experienced. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just trying to comfort her. And so then, you know, and I come in and I bounce back and stuff. And so, yeah, that was definitely like full on, like just seeing the worst of me, right? You know, and ever since then, it's been, you know, she knows now. Like now
Yeah.
she's been, except for Sean O'Brien, she's came and crewed me at every event so far.
Cool.
So she knows, and at this point, I want her there. You know, she's definitely the rock now. Like, you know, like I need,
Nice.
after, because she wasn't there for, no one was there for Sean O'Brien. I didn't have a crew, didn't have pacers or anything, and it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
I needed someone to kind of like get me going, and I was pretty low in that race. But yeah, now she knows. And even in training runs, you know, during the summer and in the past, you know, I'll go out for long runs in the heat or something, or, you know, she's like, hey, you know, make sure to do this and this. And, you know, and then when I come home, you know, if I'm feeling good, you know, I'm good, right? You know, but
Nice.
then there's days where it just beats me up, and she's, you know, hey, you make sure to do this and this, you know. So she's definitely learning too, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah.
Do they have bodybuilding crew? Like, are you inept? Are you you know, good at that now for her? Like, can you
Oh
reciprocate?
yeah. You know, oh yeah, you know, when we
Competitions aren't.
The
oh yeah, when
competition
we go to
side.
competition,
They're not quite the same.
no, not the same. But I tell you, you know, when I go to competitions, it's, you know, you know, of course I want to be there for her and support her. And so it's like I'm carrying her bags, and, you know, doing whatever she needs to do, you know, get her in the right place, you know, because you know, the week of, well, in the 24 hours leading up to it, you know, she's like me in an ultra. She's not on many calories. So,
Yeah.
you know, because they're trying to drop weight and drop, you know, and even try to get dehydrated, you know, so that your skin gets tighter and the muscles come out, you know. So I mean,
Mm.
she's, you know, extremely dehydrated, and they take diuretics and all that stuff. It's
Wow.
absolutely insane. But
That's,
so I mean, there's definitely,
that is ultra running crazy. Like that
oh
is,
yeah, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And so it's, you know, and then, you know, immediately they get off stage and they're just, you know, pounding water and coconut water and, you know, electrolytes and so forth, you know, to bounce back. And so there's definitely been times after after competitions where it's, I'm trying to, taking care of her, make sure she's good to go, just as like if I was at mile, 90 or,
Yeah.
the marathon, I'm just not feeling it and completely out of it, but, and it's funny you guys say that because she actually just went out of town and because she coaches now and she had an athlete do a competition. And I had a reminder. I'm like, you're there as a coach, and you need to crew her just like I crew you or you're crewing me, like you got to be her crew. You got to make sure she gets in the right spot and has all of her stuff and, and stuff like that. So, and she was like, yeah, I never really thought about that way, so it's good. We both get it. We both,
Nice.
it's two completely different, sports training, but there's some commonality, common baselines there that,
Yeah.
we both get it. We both know that, you have to put in the work and then when it comes to competition, we're both there to support each other.
So your time, your training has gotten more and more over the years, right? So you talked about, now you're doing strength training, you're doing cross training, you're running more obviously for these hundreds and ultras. Have you gotten more time now that you're, not in your 20s or 30s?
No, not at all. It's trying to find the time, and working around, even when I try to train for races, even the race that I train for, I got to be very careful in picking what race I do. Obviously there's a lot of races I want to do, but it's like, well, do I have time for that race? And then back into that of, okay, what's my training going to be? Do I have time to even put that training in for that time of year, thing. So it definitely becomes a challenge of just trying to find time. And, there's, I put my training plan together. And so when I did grandma's and Indy, I bought a training plan online from a coach and then, so those were great. And then, but pretty much since then, I've just basically been kind of referencing those and I just kind of tweak them, and so like a lot of like the speed works I do for ultras are kind of the mile repeats and so forth that I use in that marathon. And then the mileage is obviously increased more. And then even when I did Chicago Marathon last year, I basically went back to that marathon training plan, but then just incorporating these other things into it. Yeah. It takes into, I got to do 2-a-days now. So it's like, and depending on the weather, do I run the morning or run the evening and do lifting in the morning or in the evening, and so there's, I put this whole training plan together, going into it and on paper, it looks great and looks, it's a lot. But there's definitely, life gets in the way, work gets in the way, or you're just not feeling good that day and you gotta, maybe you have to skip a workout or something. And it, I'm beyond the point now, in 20s and 30s, I would have totally regret having to skip a workout, because of whatever reason. Now it's like, okay, I'm not gonna.
Life goes on.
Yeah, life goes on. If I miss a workout, if I have to skip a day because I'm busy doing this or that, or then it is what it is. Like I'm not going to try and go make it up somewhere else. But no, it doesn't get any easier. So of trying to find time for sure.
Do you do the 2-a-days because of the time aspect of just not being able to do it all after work or before work, or is it actually planned 2-a-days?
It's planned for 2 days is the way I got it. So
Okay. Nice.
some of it is to get extra miles in. So instead of doing one big long run during the week, it's broken up into two runs, or the 2 days are it's lifting and then running.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask though, about your time, right? Because your time, like I said, is not getting, it's not opening up. At this time, it's actually more busy than you were before, and part of that is because you, as you mentioned earlier, you own your own company, right? But you have a day job.
I've got a day job. and then own Final Lap
Uh-huh.
as a side business. So
Yeah.
I always kind of joke around and tell people I've got in the adult job, the adult career job, and
Yeah.
then I've got the fun job.
The fun
So
job. Yep. Yep. So the fun job. What? So Final Lap is your basically race management, timing and timing, right?
yep.
What made you want to get into that? When did you start it? Like, what was the impetus from getting into that part of the sport?
Yeah, so it started. I started the company 10 years ago,
Wow.
the end of 2020 or fall of 2012 was when I started it. The first race that we actually timed was in spring of 2013. So 10 years ago, I started it. So at the time, 10 years ago, where I was um, I was the um, so if I back up even further, give you a little bit more backstory. So I had mentioned, when I was in college, I worked for a running store.
Hmm.
So after I graduated college, I started working full time at the running store, and um, when I was there, I ended up creating the Route 66 10K race in Edwardsville, Illinois, as part of the Route 66 festival that at the time the Chamber of Commerce put on. So I created this 10K part of the festival, and then there was some changes between the city and the chamber, and it got moved over. And one of the things that the city said when they took over the festival is because it was the running store that was putting on the race, and so they said, well, we don't want any businesses making money off events, so it's got to be a non-for-profit who does this. So you got to be non-for-profit if you're going to want this race again. And I said, all right. So there was a group of runners that we always hung out together. We always ran on Saturdays from the store, and we go do races together. And so I got them all together and said, hey, let's put a running club together, and make it official. And so we end up doing that, and that became the Metro Milers Running Club. And then I took the race and basically gave it to the club. But then, since I was kind of leading the charge, they made me the club president, so which was fine. So yeah, and then I ended up leaving the running store and going to started using my degree, college degree, and ended up going to the company where actually I still work at. So that's my full time
The
job. So
big boy job.
yeah. So I ended up going there. But then, so I ended up doing that, but then I still stayed on as race director of this 10K and then president of the running club. And so at the time we had no money. We were putting on this race, and the race was only, at the time it was, 100 runners, 150 runners. And so we were to save costs, we were basically timing it ourselves. So we were, pull tagging it manually. We were doing that, which was fine, early on, and back then there was only, one company in the area that had chip timing. Everyone else was pull tagging. I guess it was Flea Feet, and then kind of Big River came on around that time too to start chip timing. But I mean, even then it was, not many companies were doing that. And so we were just pull tagging it and timing ourselves, which is fine. And then as the race grew, we were like, hey, we need more equipment. We need a better clock. We need to now buy this timing software and stuff like that, just to kind of manage as this race kept getting bigger. And so we were like, well, in order to offset those costs as a club, let's generate costs or generate some money by let's offering to local other 5Ks in the area, and we'll help them we'll time their race for them and charge them $100, which is nothing, and that way we can pay for this equipment that we had. So we ended up doing that. But then, the word kind of got out that, hey, like you don't need to go to a race timing company and pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars, where you can just go to the club, this running club in Edwardsville, and they'll basically do it for free. And so it was all volunteer based. And so after a while, just, how it is, volunteers, people just didn't want to do it anymore. And it was hard to get volunteers. And I agree, I was like the club president, and I was like, we're not in the timing business. We're a running club. Like, the only reason we were doing this is to try to offset some of our costs, in which it already paid for itself. So, at this point, it was like, we don't really need this money. And, it's nice to help these other races in the area as a running club, and, be out there, but supporting the community. But it was like, we don't need the money. So we're not a business. We're not for profit. And, and it was always the same people, volunteering. It was myself and like two other people. And that's who it was. And so then, the club decided we're just not going to do this, which is fine. And even then, we even made the call that we weren't going to time our own race. And because at this point, the race had grown, it was over 300 people. It was getting close to 400. And so we were like, it's gotten to a point now where we can't do this ourselves. We're going to have to hire someone. So we hired a timing company to come in. And at the time too, I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't mind. I enjoy being there, being a part of the event. I don't mind timing it. I like being around these events and being in the running community. But I agree with everyone. Like, I'm not getting paid. This is volunteer, but I'm like, if I got paid for this, like, I wouldn't mind being here, And so then I started looking around and start, looking and researching, like, okay, what would it take? Because, you had basically two players over in the Missouri side. You had one player over here on the Illinois side, and seeing the number of events back then, looking at it today, it was small, but back then it seemed a lot. It seemed like a lot of events. And I'm like, there's just not enough, there's definitely an opening here for another timing company to come in to cover geographically an area. And so I started looking at what it would take to start up. And also at the time too, the day job that I was at, I was kind of unhappy and just kind of looking, for other things. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, let's do it, and, maybe I can make this into a full-time gig and, and get out of the current job. So looked into it and ended up taking the big jump and starting it and buying, a small amount of equipment. And at the time I knew a lot of, being with the running club and, running all the time and being in the community. I had a lot of connections with other races that I had ran, or friends with the race director, or talked to them at some point. And even there was, some of the guys that I was teammates with in college, they were now at local schools and they were coaching or assistant coaches in cross country and track. So I had some of those connections. And so right away, I just basically started calling everyone up and was like, hey, I'm starting a timing company, and you need a timer. Do you want a timer? Do you want to switch? And I'm offering chip timing too. So, because there was no other company on the Illinois side that was offering chip timing. Okay. So that was big. And, I ended up getting 28 races, right? The very first year. And so it just kind of slowly started going up from there. But so that's kind of how it all started. And, and yeah, I mean, there's definitely, that was, like I said, that was 2013, our first race that we timed. And now here we are 10 years later. And it's definitely grown. And, we've gotten bigger events. We're traveling to different events, and, and we're at a point now where, we're at I feel like over the 10 years, there's been some critical points in the business. And I feel like we're at another one of those points of, there's definitely a lot of demand and a lot of things in the future on the horizon. I think we can go after and continue to grow this business because the demand is there, and just so many different avenues of running. And I shouldn't even say running, because we timed cyclocross races, we've timed bike races, just any sporting event. There's definitely opportunities, and it was, the industry itself has been growing over the years, and it really, it got pretty big in 2019. And then, everyone was, at least on our side of the industry, was like, 2020 is going to be huge. Like, there was a lot of anticipation, because the way, if you look at the bell curve of the number of events and the number of participants from 2015 to 2019, it was ticking up really big. And so 2020 was really shaping up to be a really big year. And we know what happened, right? COVID shut everything down, and it's been a slow rebound, at least in 21, and then even into 22. And it's been some areas, some events are still struggling to come back, and other events have gone berserk, and their numbers have, double, tripled, sold out, whatever, or new events have come up. And so it's definitely interesting to see that side of the business. But,
why do you think that is?
For, at least in this area, at least the events that we've been a part of, or other events that I've seen in this area, I think it's a combination of a couple different things. There's, the high level is, we, in 2020, 2021, people, they got away from the events. They went off and did their own thing. Maybe they, got together with a couple of friends, and they would just go do training runs, or they did training runs on their own or whatever. And I think that kind of changed the mindset of, a lot of people. And also the economy changed a little bit, because, in 2019, prior to COVID, you would always see these, like, at least at like a 5K level, 10K local level, you'd always see like these weekend warriors. You see the same people show up at all these 5Ks, and you don't see that very often anymore. And I think people kind of just, once they got that break, I think they realize, like, I don't need to be doing this all the time. And I also think people started training. I mean, they were doing it before, but I think even more now, where people are a little bit more cautious on what races they're doing, the cost of them, if they're traveling, and they kind of concentrate on one race, and they're training on just that one race. And they may not do races leading up to it. You don't have that. I don't feel like you have, or at least I don't see it. You don't have that weekend warrior anymore. You don't see those people that are doing, races all the time. I mean, there's still some people out there, but not in the amount of numbers before. And also too, some of the older events that have been around for 20, 30 years, at least what I've seen, is my observation is some of those numbers, some of those races are hurting. They never really bounce back. I think it's a couple different things. It's the people who are organizing those events are older. They're not using the current technology. They're not using social media as much. They're not doing, what they were doing before was handing out paper flyers, at other races or wherever. And, paper, you don't see paper flyers anymore. Everything's digital, right? Everything's social media. That's how you learn about races. And I think there's some changing of the guard there on some of those events, where they just don't market it themselves to the audience where they're at, anymore. And kicking off an email here and there and say, hey, this race comes up, it's not doing it right. And there's also new events have come up since we're back from COVID. New events have came in that are more attractive. They're in a place maybe there wasn't a race before, and it's like, oh, I want to go run on that course because I've never ran there before, or I've never done that, or just it's kind of, it's the new shiny object, right? And so it's like, well, even I know this race has been out there for 30 years. It's, it's a fun race to do, but I kind of want to go try this one. It's a little bit different. And so that's kind of shifted some of the participants to different areas. And so but again, there's also some very popular races that were popular before COVID, and they're still popular today, and they're still getting to people. So it's definitely an interesting, to see the trends. It's definitely very interesting for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're always going to have, and you probably more so before, right? Have had the same people running the same 5Ks and the same 10Ks, right?
Yeah.
Every year, they're like, I run this race every year. You probably don't see that as much now, but there's still so much variety out there.
Yeah. Well, and it's also the aging too of the, the community too. So it's, you talk about those, we talk about those people that are, that would always do those races all the time. Well, you think about, when I started Fun a lot 10 years ago, right? You would see those people do all those kind of big races or name races all the time, the popular ones all the time. You'd see them all the time. Well, I mean, that was 10 years ago. So, I mean, if those people were in their 30s or 40s, they're now in their 50s or 60s now. And so they may not be racing as much anymore, and then you've got the new generation coming in, and like I said, those, teenagers or 20-year-olds, they're not looking at their emails. They're on whatever social media app, and so it's like, if you're not marketing to them in that platform, they're never going to see your race. And so, you're losing some of that. It's, so it's kind of like the generation has gotten older. It's changing the population and of how races are marketed and targeted these days, and try to get their, runners to sign up.
So I haven't been running, but almost 9 years. What's the, I mean, from your viewpoint, what's been the evolution of like timing, right? So, I mean, we've seen people talking about the big Garmin watches, right? And I'm like, I've always had just a regular Garmin, like, because it's been the last 10 years, right? The evolution of timing has got to be huge over the last, 10, 15 years.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's, it's definitely changed over time. I mean, I remember,
I think I was at one race. I think I've done one race my entire time where it's been the pull tabs.
Yeah. I mean, there's still some races out there. There is a local company that still does a lot of races like that. I mean, they're small races, 100 people or less. And it's mostly just from a cost standpoint, right? You charge very little for that because you don't have the cost of the chip or the bib and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, the technology is totally changed from when we started 10 years ago. And even when I started 10 years ago, even if you go back even further, if we go back to even when I was, right out of college, I mean, the technology is completely night and day. And so like when we started, we were using the company, the type of equipment we were using was iPico Sports. And that's the company. I don't know if you've ever seen it, may not, because it's not popular anymore. At least in road races, it's more popular in cross country, but they have the chip is on the shoe, and it's like a flat square, and you tie it to your shoelaces. And so, I mean, like, in between 20 whatever, well, I started in 2012, so like 2007, up until then, like that was the big thing, and there was other companies out there, Championship and everything, you look at old marathons from those days, and all the timing chips are on the shoe, and and there's different variations of the timing shoe or the type of chip, and so like that was the most reliable thing. And then companies start getting a little bit smarter because that technology, it's all RFDI, so it's all different they start realizing, well, to get better strength of signal, because, okay, I'm getting misreads, people are coming across, we're getting a lot of misreads. Why is that? It could be the density of people crossing, we need to get a different frequency or, strength of signal. So the technology just kept evolving. And then, then the chip went from the shoe, then it went to the bib. The other thing, when it was on the shoe, you had to return it. So you cross the finish line, you always had to have volunteers with clippers there and clipping them off the shoe and collect them. And it was a big pain in the butt. And so I think initially when I started the company, I bought like 500 chips. And like the first year we were down to like 300. We had like lost 200 because people just didn't return them. And then you had to buy new ones, and, that stuff was not cheap at the time. And so it was just like, I'm losing money here, but losing money, but at the same time, I was making money, and cause you get to reuse them all the time. But even then, from a results standpoint, it was still us, as well as other timing companies. We're still printing results. You get them all, you get everyone in, and you had to wait all the way until everyone was done, and then you print it out, and then you post it up on a wall or whatever, and then people get to see the results, and then you hand it the piece of paper or the awards to the organizer, and they do awards, and that was still great. And everyone, so everyone was like huddled around this piece of paper that was taped up onto a wall to see what their times are. And so, but then as time progressed, over the years, when we got into 2015, and then it was like the technology started changing, then then it was like results are online now, and but
or instant. And they're instant, right?
Well, yeah, it was instant. It was online, but I mean, even then, that was still fairly new. The chip on the bib was still like, once the chip went on the bib, that was kind of like the game changer. And all the timing equipment companies out there, I mean, quickly started to change, because you didn't have to worry about collecting them back, and it was just so much easier. And those were stronger, they were getting better reads and stuff like that. And so it was just a game changer in the industry. And so then everyone started changing to that. And then, and even the equipment, the setup was different. Before it was just, oh, you got a timing mat on the ground, and then then they start creating antennas that were on the side, or even from up above coming down. And so it was, you no longer had this mat on the ground anymore, and so there was different types of timing antennas that were being invented and created. And so a lot of different variation of what was out there from a configuration standpoint. And so then like I said, the results, then it just started to come like, oh, this is online. And then but then it's like, you got to have internet access, and so it's like, for us, like I said, we started out, we were just doing paper, and so we did that for a couple of years, printing out the results. And then it was like, okay, our competitors are posting stuff live. We need to do that. And okay, well, we need internet. So now that's a cost of the business. We got to have a hotspot, with us. And do we even have cell service at all the events we're doing, And so, but it was like just trying to keep up with that. We had to evolve too. And, and from a runner's perspective, the participant, they craved it, right? It's like, oh, great. I can, as soon as I cross the finish line, I can pull up, look at it online. And it was like, that's great, and then you go to another race and they don't have it, and you're like, well, this sucks, right? And so it was just like they were craving that. And so, I mean, it's just the demand of where things were going. And so, we end up, we did, like I said, we had iPico Sports equipment early on, and then I quickly made the change about 4 years in, and was like, we got to get rid of this equipment. It's not allowing us to do what I want to do in the future. And I want to be just like these competitors. I want to do exactly what they are doing, because at least what I see is they're the best in the industry, and I want to be up there. So we quickly changed. Well, I shouldn't say quickly. We changed equipment, and it was like, if I'm going to change equipment, I want the best out there too. And so kind of shopped around, and just me being a runner itself and going to all these events, running races myself, I was like, kept seeing, this equipment out there, and was like, this is great stuff here. I've seen other timing companies have this, this type of equipment, and that's what I want. And so yeah, and we end up making the switch over to Chronotrack timing equipment, and it's been a game changer. And because you're able to do live results instantly, notifications, all that stuff on, all integrates with their, registration. So that was a game changer for us, and haven't looked back since. And even, we're just recently, we've really started to get into the cross country side of things. For a while, I kind of stayed away from that, just because we were so busy with road races. But just in the last 2 years, and especially this year, have really gotten in deep with the cross country. And so this year, we did a little bit last year, but not at every meet. But this year we're doing it every meet. And we've timed cross country the last 2 weekends, some pretty big meets. But we're doing live results in cross country, live team scoring. So, I mean, as kids are finishing, their results are online. Team scores are being calculated as those kids finish. So all the coaches, all the parents, literally all they do is just go up to our website and pull up the race results, and they can see their kids' times, see the team scores instantly. And that technology, is now, it's been around for a couple of years now, but now it's like a game changer now.
Yeah.
The meets that we are timing, we did it over the weekend, the last 2 weekends, and it was the first time that those meets have had that, and everyone loved it. And now coaches are coming up to us and say, hey, we want you to time our race now. We want that, because we're the only timer in Southern Illinois that does that for cross country. There's other timers in Central Illinois, by Peoria, and in further north that do that. But there's nothing south of Peoria, no one south of Peoria that does that. I mean, obviously there's people in Missouri and in other states, but so that's like again, the technology has changed. And now once it's been out there and people have seen the ease of it and the instantaneous of it, people just love it. We also time, we time a couple 100-milers. We do Tunnel Hill, we've done Kettle Moran this past year. And what we've also done too with those races, which again has been, talking about technology, is, when you're in a 100-miler, you can't do this at every 100 miles. But, even over the evolution of 100-milers, there may not be any live results because of the cell surface, right? So it depends on where you're at, but, there's also, you may not get splits either, or you may not know where your runner is in some of these ultras, right? And so what we've done too at some of these 100-milers is, or at least we've tried so far, we've been successful, because we've been able to at least get at least 1 bar of service. There's definitely times where we've had a timing mat out in the middle of nowhere and literally had 1 bar of service, but it worked. Where we've been able to do live results at timing mats, at these splits, as well as notifications. So, runners, family members, crew members can sign up and track their runner. And so they can get text messages as their runners are going through these timing splits, out on the course, especially at aid stations where it may not be a crewable aid station, so they can say, oh, okay, our runners through that aid station, and doing that at some of these ultras that we've done, has been again a game changer. And we've had people come to us afterwards and just like, this is so great, especially from a crew perspective. We've never had this before. And again, it's that instantaneous results, and that's what's driving the technology. Is everyone wants the results fast and very available, in whatever means. They want to have it on their phone. Either they want to look it up or they want to have a text message or something. And and if you're not doing that today from a timing perspective company, you're just going to get left behind. Because participants are wanting it, race directors are wanting that, and so they're going to go after those companies. They're going to hire those companies that can offer that that technology. So
yeah, I feel like most of the races still, like ultras, they have splits, right? But it seems like, I mean, Tammy, you're more of the crew than I was, since you've crewed me. Is most of those splits are like, you get it and it's already 20 or 30 minutes old, right?
Yeah,
it's definitely not. Yes, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard to rely on the service, where the crew is and everything. It's hard enough for you to get the time out, and then by the time I get it, it's outdated information, or I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, we've been able to, all the ultras that we've timed, we've been lucky enough to where we've been, like I said, we've been able to have some type of cell service. So we've been able to run, take a timing mat out there with a hotspot and at least have one bar of service. But I mean, here in the Midwest, it's flat. There's, obviously there's hills, we call them, big hills, but I mean, in general scheme, it's pretty flat here. But I know that one thing that's, again, technology wise, that's helping the industry, especially the ultra world, is Starlink. And the timers out there out in the west, in the mountains, there is no cell service, they've been able to hook up a timing mat to a Starlink and have cell service and do live results out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that you've also are starting to see, that's how a lot of the, as you probably have seen with these ultra marathons that are doing live broadcasts now, live coverage, Air Vipa and Western State, all Air Vipa's races, Western States, and they just did Hard Rock this year. I mean, that's all Starlink.
That's all satellite.
It's all satellite. Yeah, Starlink, it's all satellite. So by having it's a way to have, that, even just having that technology to now where you can have data in areas where you would have never had cell service before, and you can now stream video or and send off timing data out into the cloud. That's been a game changer too. Of just the industry itself. So again, it's just it's like, oh well, that race is doing it. Can you do it at this race? Where we've got bad cell service at this one aid station out in the middle of nowhere. But we really want to have this. And so from a timing side, it's like we got to find creative ways to figure this out. So.
Yeah. It's funny because I was just going to ask, like, what's next in the world of races and timing and, all of that piece that we can look forward to. And it sounds like the Air Vipa and them, they all have it figured out with the live streaming.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, right? In the ultra world these days, in the last, they started that, what was that?
Like 2 or 3 years.
It was like around COVID time. I think they started that, or maybe it was the year of COVID. This year it was what, Black Canyon. I did Black Canyon in 2020, right before COVID. So it would have been Black Canyon in 2021 was their first live stream, and of course it's blown up since then. And and now it's like, that's the next big thing, right? Is the live stream ultra marathons or live stream races in general. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the next big thing in the industry.
But unless you're like in the top 10, right? Your live streaming is only good for some of those, unless you're, for me in the back of the pack, I'm never going to get live streamed.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, but it's the coverage, right? It's
the coverage of the race.
It's the coverage of the event. Yeah, they may only be doing the leaders up front, but it's still bringing in the audience, and it's getting people to getting people interested in ultras and to do those races or whatever, or think about other ultras, maybe in their area. Obviously, they live stream Western states. Not everyone's getting into Westerns, right? And even the Air Viper races that they live stream, those things sell out so fast, and so it's not everyone's getting into those either, but it gets people interested in the sport, but yeah, I mean, in some of those events, some of those, at least I think they're trying to keep the live stream up even longer to where it's at least a static cam, overnight or even the next day, to where at least, they may not they're not going to have a commentator, but at least, you can go back and be like, hey,
there was me running through.
I finished in, 28 hours, there I am right there, so, but
So I feel like, I mean, and race directing, we haven't even gotten into that, but between race directing and the timing, right? It's such a behind the scenes, especially the timing, such behind the scenes. Really have an appreciation for it. Tell me, what is the day in the life of a timer for a race, especially since we're in doing ultras. What's the day in life of a ultra marathon, say, I don't know, 50-mile, 100-mile, for a timing company? I mean, that's got to be a long day, almost as long as running it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're talking about ultras, talking about, 100-milers, so like I said, we've done Tunnel Hill the last 3 years. We've done Kettle Moran this year. We've got Hennepin later next month, and then again Tunnel Hill, and then we've also done Shippey too. So we're up to 400-milers a year, and each one of them is different. But and we've also timed. I've also timed 24-hour races too. The Ace Slinger is 24 hours, which is it's a lap race, so it's an easy setup, but it's 24 hours, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, timing as a timer for these ultra marathons for a 100-miler, it's a long weekend. It's a long weekend of no sleep. And it's just as tiring as, crewing. It's not as exhausting as running it, right? You're not sore, but you're getting no sleep. And so, yeah, so I mean, if we just use like Tunnel Hill as an example, so we'll a couple weeks out, we'll be talking with the race director, communicating back and forth on bib numbers and getting that situated and get those bib numbers ordered and so forth, and then getting them in, and so that race, they're around 800 to 900 runners. So we get the bibs in, as well as ordering the timing tags. We get those in about a week, 2 weeks in advance, and then we have to chip them all. We got to put the chips on the back of the bibs, assign all the bibs through Ultra Sign Up, and then download it and then put it into our scoring software. And so we get that all set up. But then the week of, we're getting all the equipment ready to go for that race. There's 6 timing points that we have out there. So we got to pre-configure all the timing boxes, make sure that we've got all the equipment we need for every single one. So I build a spreadsheet of each timing mat of what we need. We need these timing mats. We need this. We need a generator. We need, a power cord, like make sure you literally have everything, USB stick, and we label them all and make sure that we've got one for every single one. And then, for basically every timing point, make sure we've got all the equipment laid out, make sure we've got everything, squared away and just get that all prepped. And then, so then like Thursday, the race is Saturday, but Thursday, usually packing everything up, putting it all in the van, and getting everything coordinated too, so, there's 6 timing points, but each one of those are on generators too. So usually we have to borrow or rent extra generators. and even borrow extra timing equipment from other timing companies, because we don't have enough equipment to handle it. So we'll borrow it from other timers, and bring it in. And so we get all that organized and packed up on Thursday, and then Friday we will head down to Vienna, and get down there. Friday afternoon, we'll right before packet pick, or about an hour or so right before packet pickup, give the bibs to the race director so they can get that all organized before packet pickup starts, and then we'll actually set up the finish line area. So with our timing tents, we have an arch, a aluminum truss for the finish line. We'll set that all up, try to set up as much as we can at the finish line. And it's in November, so it's cold. So we put up tents and walls and get that all organized. And then that night, once we're done with that, then we will usually we have everything in our van, but then that night we will separate the timing equipment. So my other timer, the way we kind of have done Tunnel Hill, it's been him and I every year. And so usually I'm at start and finish line the entire event, and then he's out on the course. I let him handle the course. So what we do then on Friday night is we'll separate all the equipment and put it into his truck of what he needs for all the timing splits. And so then when we get up in the morning, 4:00 in the morning, early morning, get up there. We go to the start finish line, kind of start setting up the actual timing equipment itself. And then eventually he will go out on the course. And then what he will do, because that course is 2 out and back. So you go south 13 miles, turn around, you come back, and then you go north 12 miles and come back. So there's 3 timing mats on the south side. There's 3 on the north side. So once we get the starting line equipment all set up, then he will start setting up the south side. So about an hour before the race starts, he'll drive out to the first timing point, which is I think it's from a race standpoint, it's 5 miles. Driving wise, it's 8 miles or something. So he'll go out there, he'll get that one set up, get it online, connected to the cloud. And then once he gets that one up, then he'll drive to the next one, and then he'll drive to the furthest one. And by the time he gets to that far to the turnaround, which is 13 miles out, the race has already started. Mm-hmm. And so, because I'll be at the starting line, and I get that race started. And so we start the race. So he's still out there setting up timing equipment, but it's 13 miles out, so it's fine. The first runners, even though that race brings in elite runners, they're not going to get there, for an hour and a half. So by the time he sets up that last timing point, he usually drives back to the start finish line and then helps me break down the starting line, because the starting line is on the other side kind of on the other side of the parking median. So we break that equipment down and then actually move it over to the finish line, reset it back up. And then so, the runners are out there going southbound. And so we're monitoring that, all the reads, because all the mats, all the timing equipments, the controllers are all connected to the cloud. So we're sitting there just watching it on a laptop, on a monitor, as the leaders coming through, watching that data come through. And then eventually once the runners hit that south turnaround and start making their way back, then Josh will go out, will then pack up his truck again with the north side equipment. So we're switching putting more equipment in his truck. And then he drives out to the north side, and then he sets up that equipment. And so that's usually, by the time we get all the equipment set up out there on the course, we're talking about, it's about 2 hours into the race, almost 2.5 hours in the race. We finally get that last piece of equipment on that far north end set up. And then at that point, once everything is set up and knock on wood, everything's connected, we've had some issues again, like I said, some of those timing points are running on one bar, and so the connectivity can go in and out, and so if it goes out, then we got to rush out there and try to, fix it and so forth. But so once everything's connected, then we're sitting at the start and finish line again, just, with two laptops and a monitor, and we're just monitoring everything and making sure that, the systems are reading correctly, everything stays online. But then, those things are running on generators. So about every 6 hours, we make a trip, and drive out there and check and fill up all the generators, tap them off, and that's each end of the course, it's not, the course wise, it's, 13 or 12 miles, but from a driving perspective, it's an hour round trip, just to go to the furthest turnaround and then come all the way back. That's an hour just to drive that. So, so if we got to fill up generators, and usually we try to make it a full trip to where we're stopping at every single one of them. So if we're doing that, we're gone for an hour and a half. And that's just on one side of the course, and then do it on the other side. So, they're depending on the situation, sometimes we'll divide and conquer, if it's time to fill up generators on both sides of the course, I'll go one way, Josh goes the other way. And that way we're knocking it out in an hour and a half. But then there's times where he'll do the whole thing, and he's gone for 2.5 hours. I don't even see him, but he's, and he's putting in 100-mile driving, just driving around, filling up generators. And so there's a lot of behind the scenes, and the runners don't know that, the crew members don't know that, they're seeing the results live, or, and that's the thing. We're just trying to keep them all online and keep the results moving smooth, and everything is live. I mean, I feel like every year there's always been something that's popped up every year. I mean, the very first year we did it was the COVID year, was 2020. And it was limited to 100 people, which was good. It kind of like got us to kind of, I mean, they didn't have many timing. They only had 2 timing points out on the course. They wanted to decrease the number, because there was only 100 people, from a cost perspective. But, in the middle of the night, we were, it was like 3 a.m, and Josh and I had been up for, 22 hours, and we're just both dog tired, and we're like, there's not many people in that race, right? And so we're like, well, let's just get some shut eye. Like, let's take a nap. Everything's going good. The system's going good. Let's just get some shut eye. And then as soon as we were about to like just take a nap, like in our cars, we start seeing like flashes in the distance, and it was lightning. And, I pull up the radar, and there was this wicked storm rolling in fast. And I mean, the radar was bright red. It was like, oh, son of a, and so I looked, and it was like 40-mile-an-hour winds, like the front. And so I was like, I told Josh, I was like, we got to break this down. Like our tents, like this stuff's all going to blow away. So we quickly, we broke everything down, we threw all the timing equipment, like kept everything online and connected, but I pulled my vehicle around. We had to stick it in the vehicle, and, and put tarps down, and this storm rolled in, and just, it was wicked. And, so that, we were awake, and, after that point, it was like, once that came, then we were like, we couldn't sleep anymore. But, and then, I think it was last year was the snow year. So they got snow.
Right.
We woke up, they weren't forecasting snow, and all of a sudden it was like, we woke up early in the morning, and it was just coming down. I was like, what the heck? And they got a couple of inches of snow. But we actually, again, in the middle of the night, I don't know what time it was, but sometime in the middle of the night, we start noticing, one of our the far turnaround on the south side, the timing system went out, or at least it went offline. And so we're like, okay, like something happened. So I told Josh, I said, I'll go out there and fix it, So I drove out there, and come to find out, it was the hotspot had frozen, because it was so cold. And so I sat there in the truck, with the heater blasted, I had to pull the battery out. I mean, it was the lithium battery had basically frozen. So I pulled the battery out of the hotspot and basically put it onto the heater vent to get it to warm back up. And I mean, the box itself was still reading. It was on. It was still collecting reads. We just weren't giving live results. So I mean, I wasn't too concerned. There just wasn't live results, but because there was no internet. But I mean, the box was still collecting reads and getting results. So it wasn't bad. But I sat there in the truck. I mean, at this point, it was in the middle of the night. 2-3 o'clock in the morning. It's below freezing outside, and you got this little hot spot. Totally exposed to the elements. Out in the middle of nowhere, and no wonder why it froze, right? So, I finally got it to warm up in the truck, got it warmed up, and it turned right back on. And so I was like, all right, but I end up, having to use some engineering and figure it out, like, how am I going to get this to work? Because the race is we're only halfway through this race. So we end up, I was texting Josh and trying to, Josh was like, so why don't you put some hot hands on it? And so I had some in the truck. So I grabbed 2 hot hands and put it in a bag and put a hot hand on both sides of it, activate it, put it on both sides of this hot spot, put it into a baggie, and then took it back out there and plugged it in. And then it stayed on the rest of the time throughout the whole night, those 2 hot spots. And so after that, as soon as that happened, I got it online. Josh told me that one of the other aid stations had gone down too. So we were like, oh, crap. Like, they're all going down. They're all freezing at this point because it was getting so cold. I think it was like 28 degrees I mean, so, technology does not like cold, right? So we ended up going out and ended up doing it to all of the aid stations or all the timing points, and putting hot hands in to keep the hot spots running, kept them turned on just so we can generate live results. So I mean, there's always something, I feel like, but it's all behind the scenes. And I, for me, being a runner, but then also being a race director and a timer, like, I enjoy being behind the scenes. I enjoy seeing, I mean, there's definitely stressful times for sure. But, just at the end of the day, when the race is successful and, everyone's happy, you see those people cross the finish line, you're like, hey, I was a part of this, I made it happen, and, but, I definitely enjoy being behind the scenes and behind the computer for sure.
Yeah. Do you notice that kind of stuff when you're running? Like, when you're running a race?
I've always noticed it.
Notice it all?
Yeah. I mean, well, it's like I'll be running and I'll go across a timing mat and I'm looking at her, or I'll go do it, even at the starting line, I'm checking out,
checking which RFID tag it is.
And, looking at looking at the equipment, I've kind of, ever since I really started the, final lap, I was always doing that. It's kind of like like a shoe geek, who's, when you go to a race and start looking at everyone's shoes, what are they racing in, or, oh, I've never seen that before. What is that shoe? It's kind of the same thing. You start looking at, what are they doing? Can I do that? Or, or like, wow, that's different or whatever. So definitely. I definitely look at those details for sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time looking and see how far we are into this, but I do want to ask like one last thing. And this is like, what's next for you? What's next for the company? Just overall, like what's in your future?
Yeah. I mean, I've got,
we could go on for another half an hour about that.
Yeah. But, I can go on forever. I mean, there's, so I mean, where I'm at today, we're with Final Lap. So at least I could say that. So we're at 50 events a year. We do everything from 1 mile races all the way up to 100-mile races. And like I said, we do cyclocross, we do some bike races, and cross country races. So we're definitely the demand is getting bigger. So definitely looking to expand the company even further and grow it even bigger. So I mean, at this point, it's in order to take on more business, I need more timers. I need more labor, right? Because I'd like to get to a point where I have, right now I really only have, one other person fully trained and experienced on timing, and have some other people that help out, that don't know the timing piece, but, help out. They can at least, they know how to turn on the system and boot it up, or, but don't know the actual timing software yet. So, but what I'd like to get to is have, maybe 3, if not 4 experienced timers, so that we can do multiple events on the same day, in different areas, and also to take the load off me. I'm doing 95% of the events, 99% of the events, so take the load off me. I'd also I've got ideas on events that Final Lap would like to, or I'd like to try to put on. I mean, we only put on one event that we own. We do some race management and organize races for other organizations, but there's only one race, the Watershed Endurance race, 3 and 6 hour race, that we actually own and put on. But there's other events that I'd like to try to put on, so I'd like to expand to that too. But again, having more staff to help with that. Yeah, I mean, where I'd like to get to in a couple of years, I mean, I'd like to be at 75 or greater events, and have a bigger staff to help out, and whatever that staff looks like. If it's getting to a point where it's a full-time gig for people, or just even a bunch of part-time people, but having people fully trained to where we're doing multiple events a year. I mean, this time of year, in September is a crazy busy time. The spring and the fall, obviously, are very busy seasons. And there's multiple races every single weekend, and just even the other timing companies in the area, we just can't take it all. And so I'd like to get to a point where we are growing bigger, to where we can kind of take on some of those events and help some of those events out, that where other timing companies in the area may not be available. So that's where I'd like to be, for sure. There's definitely room for growth in the industry. Running or all sporting events have come back full steam ahead since COVID, for sure. So, and it's not going to slow down. So,
yeah. Is there a point where this becomes full time for you?
I think there probably is. I keep asking myself that every year. And I think it's, every year I'm like, I can keep swinging it, and then it just keeps growing every year. So, I mean, eventually I'm going to have to think about that. And I think, there's many different variables that go into that decision, for sure, of what that looks like, but if I think I know where the company is going, or where I feel the company is going, and where I kind of want it to go, it can be definitely a full-time job, for sure. Cool. And finally step away from the corporate job. But I'm not quite there yet. So, but it's definitely getting closer.
Yeah. So what's the last, I'm still involved. Where have you noticed the difference between doing the cyclocross and some of the mountain bike races versus running races?
Difference in what? What do you mean?
Well, okay, so first the timing, but I mean, it's a different community, right? I mean, you're sitting around that community.
Yeah, I mean,
that's another one we could go for anher half an hour.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's, there's even just between road and trail and ultra, right? It's a different community. And then being around, the cyclocross biking is completely different too. And so, so we did that. We did the cyclocross for the very first time last year, and we're doing it again this year. And it's the first time that they had done chip timing. And so before it was all manual through USA Cycling, and have a camera, but it was very manual. And so they decided to kind of take the jump and go chip timing, and they loved it because it's
Yeah.
instant, right? Again, it's instant. I mean, they couldn't believe how it basically, because it's cyclocross, so it's like a crit, so it's a lap, so I'm
Right.
keeping track of laps, and so it's like I have a TV monitor that shows what lap they're on, who's in first, where they're, and it's like, just a leaderboard, right? And so that just like blew their mind that was like
Is that the
something
same
that,
as say a 2 mile loop
yeah,
course
and so
that we
for
would
yeah,
do
so
running?
from my perspective of timing, I mean, there's a little different configuration change a little bit in the software, but overall, it's the same concept as if it was a 24-hour ultra race or a 3 or 6 hour race, whatever it is. It's still a lap, and it's just the system's just counting laps, and whoever does that lap the fastest is the overall winner. So from my perspective as a timer, it's the same setup, really. There's no difference now, but again, it's a different culture, so it's it's something different. And yeah. I mean, it varies from different. I mean, even when you get into cross country, again, it's completely different. But we've got you got to have the capability, and there's different setups and software and all that stuff, but as a time business, if you're able to provide all that, it just makes you even more wanted, or that's not right, but wanted.
So what's next for you personally, running wise, I guess?
So for me personally, next on my calendar right now, I'm training for the Javelina 100. So that's what I'm training for, 7 weeks out right now. So at the end of October, and then after that, will most likely I will be doing Boston. So I had qualified in Chicago last year. So finally got that qualification, and ran a 3:03 in Chicago last year. And then so I'll be, Boston sign up is in a couple of weeks. But my time is 7 minutes under the qualifying, so I'm not worried about, not getting in. So, I mean, I should be able to get in. So I'm planning on doing that in April. So again, kind of doing this cycle of ultra 1 year, road marathon another year, and kind of back and forth. So, I did Chicago last year, Javelina this year, and I'll do Boston next year, kind of going back and forth, but that's kind of on the plan right now. Those are the only two events. Beyond that, I don't have anything planned. I would like to possibly go back to Black Canyon in February, just to get my Western State qualifier in for the year. But it's 6 weeks right before Boston, and I don't know. If I did do it, I wouldn't race it. I would just try to take my time, and I think it's 15 hours is the cutoff. So as long as I'm in under 15, it's fine. But I also don't want to trash my legs, because I want to re-qualify in Boston. That's my plan. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the registration, because it's getting almost full. So once it gets to the very end, I'll make that call. But we'll see. But at least right now, it's just Javelina and then Boston.
And Javelina, that's a qualifier though too, right?
It is. Yeah. So it would be my qualifier for this year. Black Canyon's February. So
there you go.
Kind of toward 24. So
there you go. Cool. All right. So I really don't want to take any more time now. So we always ask,
except for the next 17 questions.
Except for the next,
rapid round. Here we go.
Rapid round. Here we go. Yeah. So we always ask the same 4 questions to all of our guests. What's your favorite place to run or race that you have, or that you currently?
Favorite place to run or race? Man. I would say, from a race perspective, I mean, from a race perspective, my funnest, I shouldn't say it's fun, maybe just because it's been my most successful is been the Chicago Marathon or running in Chicago. That's where all my fast marathons have come from. But, even just running on the lakefront, when I've gone up there and just, for whatever trips, and just running on the lakefront, that's always awesome to run, there. I've ran in Arizona a couple times. It's always fun to run out there, or anywhere out west, it is fun anywhere different than here, I would say. But I mean, if you had asked, if you wanted to ask me what about local, I mean, I probably Forest Park. I mean, I used to run there all the time after work pre-COVID. Now that I work from home, I don't get over there very often. But it's always a great place to run. No matter it's a staple in the St. Louis area, right?
Yeah.
So
it's funny how when you work from home, you run less area. You run from your house every day
I run the same routes,
driving somewhere.
Yeah, the 3 or 4 routes right from my doorstep. That's all I run now, and it's boring. So anything outside of the norm is like, oh, this is great. So
yeah. What's a bucket list race that you'd like to do someday?
So I've got a couple. So from the road side, it would be New York and London marathons.
Okay.
And then from the trail and ultra side, I mean, number one is Western States. I would love to run that. I mean, I'm up to, I think, 8 tickets now and counting. So trying to do a qualifier every year to increase my chances there. I would like to do Leadville one day. And then another race that I kind of would
those are two very much more technical races, by the way, just going back to previous conversations.
Yes. Yeah. So
it alternates the fast and the road and the trail. It's fun.
Yeah. And then another race, I think it keeps perking my eye, that I would say probably put on that list is the Keys 100.
Oh, there you go. There's the heat again.
Right. So, I mean, I mean, how cool would it be to say, hey, I ran from Key Largo to Key West. I ran 100 miles. I ran the length of the Keys. Like, why drive it when you can run it? So,
exactly.
But I mean, it's flat, right? But it's a tough It's a tough race because you're running in May. It's May in South Florida. I mean, you're talking 100-degree weather. And it's all pavement because you're running you're running on basically the sidewalk the entire way. But it's also gorgeous too because you got the ocean on both sides, or at least when you're crossing the bridges. But
some of them,
but yeah. So I would say those races are those are my bucket races for sure.
Yeah, cool. So this podcast, is all about networking. In fact, you were recommended by our good friend Jake Grossbauer, which we had on a couple episodes ago. Are there 2 people that you think, when you think of endurance, there are 2 people that you think that should be on the podcast?
So it's the names that come to mind from an athlete standpoint. I think you've probably already had, like, because we're you and I are probably common friends with them. So it's like, I gotta, you can't have repeats there.
Yeah.
So, there's some other people that I've got in mind. May not be as close to them, but I could definitely put you in touch for sure. But I think some interesting people, I was recommended from Jake, from a more of a business person, right? From a timing perspective of things, but and kind of keeping on that like RD side or business side. I think some 2 people that I think would be interesting, maybe you would have, or if they would be willing to come on, is Michelle Hartwick, the owner of Orneo Mule. So we've timed a couple of races of hers. Obviously, she's a business owner of that business who put on multiple ultra marathons, some classics. And she's a runner too. And I think she's training for Tunnel Hill 50 this year too. So she's done many races. So I would recommend for her. I think that'd be a great conversation for you.
Yeah.
Another name that I would recommend is Steve Durbin, the race, Durbin Race Management. He's the race director of Tunnel Hill. Great guy. he used, I don't think he runs very often these days, but, he used to run back in the day, but, and he's put on some great races and, himself, as well as, he's also best friends with Laz too. So he's helped out with Laz's events too. So not only has he put on some crazy races and organized them, but he's also seen some great performances in the ultra and endurance world too, up close and personal. So, cause he with between Tunnel Hill and being race director of 6 Days in the Dome, I mean, he's seen some world records go down in the sport. So
awesome. Yeah, definitely. If we could get in touch, I would be up to both of those. Yeah, both of them. Huge names.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So how could people follow you, get in touch with you, connect with you, whether it's on socials, whether it's email, Strava, whatever.
So me personally, I'm actually I'm kind of like anti-social myself personally. I mean, I have Facebook, but nowhere else. I mean, I'm not even on Strava. So, but for Final Lap, Final Lap Racing, you can it's finallapracing.com is the website, but you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads. We have a Twitter, but there's not much out there anymore on it. But yeah, it's the username handle and all that stuff is Final Lap Racing is where you can find us at.
All right, cool. Thank you. Well, Rich, thanks for coming on. It was huge. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I mean, I'm sure that we could have gone much longer on many different topics for sure, and got more in depth on things.
Yeah, well,
I want to say I love hearing the progression about not wanting to run an 800 because it's too far to now doing 100.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, 800s were too far. And Tammy, so we didn't even get into, because Tammy was a hurdler in high school.
I was.
Yeah.
And now you do ultras.
No, she doesn't. She does not do ultras.
Oh,
I know. She doesn't have.
Not that crazy.
We're not going to get into that conversation.
Yeah.
She crews.
Don't open up those back worms, right?
Yeah, no. She crews ultras. She's the crew extraordinaire. But so anyway, stick on for 1 second after. But Rich, appreciate it. Love to have you on again at some point as we keep following up. But thank you for coming on, especially at the late notice. But appreciate it, and we will see you out on the trail, see you out on the road, see you at Boston next year, see you wherever. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.
That's cool talking to Rich. I mean, my thing was just learning all the behind the scenes stuff, right? I mean, he's got a great running story, and then all the behind the scenes stuff. And we went for almost 2 hours and 15 minutes. Jeez.
I know. It was great. No, it was fun because I met him a few weeks ago at his race, the race that they own. So that was fun seeing a little bit behind the scenes then, or I guess I've seen some of it at Shippey too, but and just learning a little bit more about that and about him as a runner, and lifelong too, basically. Right.
Lifelong running. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wanted to get into, we could have gotten more into, his childhood and running 800. 800 was too far, coming into high school, and now he's running ultras, and would he still be a sprinter if he didn't do that? Like, what would running be like if you didn't run those 800s, right? Yeah. And I can't compare, because I hated running when I was in middle school, high school, college. I hated running. So, but for somebody that was but somebody that, like you guys are like lifelong runners, I admire that. It's great. They're great stories. My story only started 9 years ago, so I can't imagine going back 30 years of running. I don't know.
No, it's impressive. I mean, it's impressive. I'm not somebody who has done it nonstop for 30 years. I've had some on and off periods, but It's
Oh,
impressive.
and then his, first ultra, he signs up for Antelope Canyon, which is an ultra, 50 miles out in the desert, pretty
Yeah.
much, right? Northern Arizona. Yeah. So
But
that was
also,
fun.
one thing I was going to say that it's kind of fun how this company that he started out of necessity really
Yeah.
looks like maybe someday soon will be able to be a full-time job. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
exciting
No, it's very
for
cool.
him.
Yeah. So many different places and great recommendations. And yeah, he's really taken off with that. And we see it more and more. Not so much. I mean, we do a couple things on the Illinois side, but yeah, it's been, he's really taken off. It would be fun to be a full-time thing, right? Wouldn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, we got a couple of really good shows coming up. So that was fun talking to Rich. And then, we got some fun things that we're looking like to do, right? So maybe looking at some races where we can do some pre-race stuff.
Oh, come on, you're giving away all of our secret plans.
Yes, people gotta stay tuned. Yeah. So maybe some pre-race. What were we calling it?
Like some round table, like
Pre-race
some
round
like
table.
group like preparations and like run. I don't want to say rundowns as like a bad pun or anything, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah. So
talk. So if you're running a race for the first time, maybe you want to. There's a race you want to hear about. See if we
Yeah.
can find some runners that have done it. And
I think we
shake
had
it up
Black.
podcast episode.
I think we add Black Canyon to that list now. I think we can do that, right? I think that was a good one. We got maybe some OT, maybe some shipping. So yeah, we got some races coming up. And if you guys are interested in a race, just let us know. Maybe we'll get some people together. So, but before then, if you are racing anytime soon and you need some extra help, you go visit our sponsor and the producer of the show. Yeah, Bellfly's Endurance Coaching, my coaching company. So like you said, we gotta get over that little hump of training as you're coming into the final weeks of training in the fall, and as you're looking forward to your races in the spring or whenever they may be. Give me a call for some coaching. We do group coaching. We do personal one-on-one coaching. We'll do some. Can do lots of things. You can call. You can text. You can email me. Go to the website bellflysendurancecoaching.com. Email is jeff@bellflysendurancecoaching.com. Or you can always call or text 636-492-2808. Anyway, Tammy, again, thank you for the hour and a half, or two and a half hours. 2.5 hours. Thank you. And
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
as always, we will see you out on the trail.
See you out there.